The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hey folks, Brian Keene here. You know, summer's over. We're entering the fall and then the winter. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving, and then of course the holiday shopping season. Speaking of the holiday shopping season, let me tell you about subculturecorsets.com. They've got everything you need for everyone on your list for this holiday season. Clothing, accessories, gifts, books, you name it, they've got it. They sponsor every show on the Project Entertainment Network, including this one. So please give them your business. Visit subculturecorsets.com.
Project Entertainment Network presents My Favorite Story, an anthology featuring short fiction written by the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network podcasts, with
Mary Sangiovanni and Brian Keene from The Horror Show,
Chuck Border, Aaron Sweet, El Mahore, and Armand Rosamilia of the Mando Method, Jeannie Engel of Origins,
Bizung's Mr. Frank,
Tom Clark from Necrocast, It On, It Cooks, Amber Fallon,
Three Guys with Beards, Christopher Golden, Jim Moore and Jonathan Maybury,
The Buttercup of Doom, Kelly Owen,
Matters of Faith's Jay Wilburn,
John Urbancic of Eight Stains.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology from Project Entertainment Network, available on Kindle, Nook, and soon in paperback from the Project Entertainment Network store.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I am Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden.
And Chris, what do you always say about this time?
Brian, I always say that little word, Excelsior.
True believers.
I wonder how many episodes we're going to have to do before I get tired of that.
I don't know. And what are you going to replace it with when you do? Make mine Marvel?
No, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I'll have to go back through other standbys.
There you go. Standbys.
A standby.
I see what you did there.
I was thinking this morning, as of today, I think I don't know if you saw this or we talked about it, but I have accepted the honor of being one of the judges for this year's World Fantasy Awards.
I did see that.
And as of today, between now and sort of the end of June, the only thing that I will be reading, other than submissions for the World Fantasy Awards, will be Defenders.
Well, that's high praise right there. Now, let me ask you something. The World Fantasy Awards, do they have a podcast category yet?
That's a good question. Number one, I don't think they do. I'll have to look. Actually, I believe there's a category, because I've just started, to get the submissions in. I believe there's a category under which podcasts fall as an umbrella.
Oh, good. Well, I would just remind you every week when you're listening to my other podcast, The Horror Show with Brian Keene, I would just remind you that you are, in fact, a World Fantasy Judge this year.
Well, sadly, I don't think Defenders Dialogue would be eligible.
No, I don't think it would.
Because I'm a judge. Although, I guess if I recuse myself, it's not like having a conflict of interest as a judge is foreign to people in this country, but...
Right.
Or any other, for that matter. Yeah, all right, well, I will keep that in mind, Brian. After Dave said nice things about Ararat last week, you have my vote.
There we go.
Well, look, Brian, we're starting this week with Defenders number 34.
That's right. We're going to continue the excellent, superb, bizarre, weird, Thomas Nagalski seizure-inducing Headmen Nebulon saga.
Oh my God! It's this issue is, yeah.
This issue is everything I love about the Defenders, especially Steve Gerber's run. As I've said, I have two favorite runs on the book. J.M. DeMatteis, which we'll get to later. He of course, had the longest run on the book. But right behind that is Gerber, and this issue is a prime example why. To recap, in case you're listening to these shows out of order, although I don't know why you do that, but some people do. We open with Nighthawk on board the Ludburdite spaceship. The Ludburdites, as you'll remember, are these red reptilian-style aliens, and they are in league with Nebulon, the Celestial Man. And I would remind our listeners, this isn't really Nighthawk. It's Nighthawk's body, which has had Chandu the Mystic's brain transplanted inside of it. But Jack Norris's consciousness has been put inside Chandu's brain. Now, that leaves some castaways. Nighthawk's actual brain is in a bowl, which Jack is clutching with Nighthawk's hands.
You know what makes me sad, Brian? I'm going to interrupt you for a second. What makes me sad is if you look at the cover of this issue, and you have the little cameo images of the Defenders up in the upper left-hand corner, which was a traditional Marvel element of their covers in that era. You have Hulk and Doctor Strange and Nighthawk's faces, and really the Nighthawk one should be the brain in a bowl.
It should be. It's either that or it should be Jack Norris without a costume on. So yeah, Nighthawk's brain is in a bowl. Nighthawk's body is inhabited by Chandu's brain, which is inhabited by Jack Norris's consciousness. Jack's body is back at Doctor Strange's house, just in a comatose state, and Chandu's consciousness has been transferred into the brain of Hulk's pet deer, Bambi. So there, I think we've recapped everything.
The funny thing is, anybody who doesn't read these comics coming into this episode will think Brian Keene made all of that up. That can't possibly be the plot of this comic book.
It's funny you should mention it. I was talking with a young horror novelist. His name is Wes Southard. I was talking with him last week. Now, he's in his 20s, and he's telling me he listens to Defenders dialogue every week. And his only familiarity with the brand of the Defenders is, of course, the Netflix show.
Okay.
But he said he loves listening to, these two old guys just wax nostalgically about all this bizarre shit from back in the 70s.
Well, to add to the bizarreness of it, to remind people, the Ludburdites, aboard whose ship this is taking place, are these red amphibian sort of frog-like creatures with weird fins on their heads, and they're following or in cahoots with Nebulon, the Celestial Man.
Right.
So I think that fulfills the weirdness quotient just on the first page.
It does, and it just gets weirder on the second page because this is a kindler, gentler Nebulon, to borrow from George Bush. This is a Nebulon who, now remember, Nebulon does not know that Jack's consciousness is inside Nighthawk's body. He thinks he's still talking to Kyle Richmond, and he's telling him, "I've changed since the last time we fought. I'm here to save humanity. The Ludburdites and I are going to expand humanity's consciousness and create a utopia on Earth." And the reason, if you remember from last episode, the Ludburdites were abducting people, including Hulk's pet deer, Bambi, which is inhabited by Chandu's consciousness. The reason they're abducting people is to probe their minds for humanity's common concept of peace. So that is what they're up to. And
including Hulk's pet deer, Bambi, inhabited by the consciousness of Chandu, as you just said. And I think that's fascinating because they've accidentally abducted the deer because it's got a human consciousness in it.
Right.
And then when Nighthawk shows up with Jack Norris's consciousness steering the body in this prison where these abducted people are taken, the deer inhabited by Chandu, who's furious because he's inside a deer, rushes toward growling. A growling deer rushes toward Nighthawk, and a bystander says, "Ye gods! The baby deer's going berserk! It's attacking him.
You know what I love about that panel is Kyle Richmond's brain sloshing around in the bowl, and Sal Buscema has drawn it so you see liquid sloshing out, just to remind you how perilous this is. Anyway. We then transition back to Connecticut, where longtime listeners will of course remember George and June. They're the folks that had the luck of having a house in the suburbs that was right next to the headquarters of the Headmen. Now, their house was trashed once before by the Hulk. The Hulk was trying to play jump rope with George's kids. George didn't like that. He attacked the Hulk. Hulk smashed his house.
Right. As I said to you last week, this is my favorite bit in this entire run.
Well, now, last episode, you'll remember George took delight in the fact that the Headmen's house collapsed, wrecked by, once again, the Hulk. So we now open where we saw Doctor Strange, Hulk, and Valkyrie last issue. They're trapped in the goo. They're making their way out of it. And George is standing there taunting them, just laughing, because they didn't get his house this time. But bad news for George. Hulk remembers now. Man tried to spoil Hulk's fun. Hulk hates puny, stupid George. And he throws a piece of wreckage at George's house and trashes it once again.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That bit I laugh every time. You'd think I'd feel bad for the guy, but I don't, because I just feel like if you're going to taunt the Hulk...
you kind of get whatever's coming.
Exactly. I mean, you're lucky that's all he smashed. Anyway, so Doctor Strange and Hulk. Strange transports the Hulk, Doctor Strange, and Valkyrie back to Doctor Strange's house. There are a carpenter and a glass cutter are there replacing the smashed window that the Fawn, Bambi, last issue had broken by jumping through it. I love the ordinariness of the fact that the carpenter and the glass cutter are there when Doctor Strange could just, waggle his fingers and fix it. But
right.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah, but Hulk is not happy to hear that Wong has let Bambi escape. Valkyrie is more concerned, of course, with Kyle Richmond, a.k.a. Nighthawk, but Hulk only wants to know where Bambi's gotten to.
Yeah, then he's mad. So Doctor Strange is trying to use his methods to locate Bambi, because, they're trying to find Nighthawk's body and Jack's mind, and they're a little worried about Chandu inside the deer. So Hulk gets pissed off because they're talking too much, and he says Hulk is leaving to find Hulk's friend Bambi. Maybe come back, maybe not, because Hulk is a big green passive-aggressive bitch.
Yes. We then get an interesting 3-panel segment where Valkyrie is standing over the comatose body of Jack Norris, and she admits that the thought of Jack dying really bothers her. But in traditional 70s comic form, she admits this out loud. She doesn't think it to herself. She admits it out loud. So Doctor Strange overhears her, and he suggests that perhaps Barbara Norris's suppressed consciousness is finally starting to surface inside Valkyrie's body.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is a great bit. And but I would like to point out that Doctor Strange, rightly so, and this reminds me of one of my favorite moments in John Carpenter's The Thing in a weird way, but Valkyrie is saying all of this, and Doctor Strange says, "A word of caution, Val. You've not yet learned to carry on these dialogues with yourself in the privacy of your thoughts. You should."
We then transition to Times Square, New York, where a meteor crash lands in the middle of Times Square, and this little bald man with glasses steps out of the flames and says, "Hello, New York," seemingly unharmed, wearing a 3-piece suit, unruffled. The cops confront him, and he explains to the cops and all the bystanders that there was no danger whatsoever. He did this all with his mind, and that he can teach any one of them to do the same thing for free.
Yeah. Then we have Hulk leaping by overhead during this, and he somehow intuitively senses that this guy is responsible for the absence of Bambi. He lands on the ground and yells, "Four Eyes stole Hulk's friend Bambi." Again, the level of absurdity here is the best. When Hulk goes to punch him, the little bespectacled bald gentleman is revealed to be Nebulon, the Celestial Man. And then as soon as he dispenses with the Hulk by encircling him in a bubble of energy and shooting him off into the sky, returns to his state as the tiny bald guy, and then women are all over him. And he decides...
Because for a moment, they saw a glimpse of his true form.
Of his true beauty, exactly. They know what he really... And basically he's saying that he can teach everybody to attain this moment of perfection, the ability to... So he's basically saying, yeah, this is what he really looks like, but he can use his mind to become the perfection version of himself, and he can teach everybody to do it through celestial mind control.
Right. Now, keep in mind, this was in the 70s. Younger listeners will probably not remember this, but the big fad at the time was something called TM, Transcendental Meditation. And, this is Gerber playing on that with celestial mind control.
And Est and all of that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's also important to note Nebulon's inner monologue. He's taking great care not to inspire fear in the humans. He wants them to trust him. He wants to, get rid of the Hulk in a peaceful manner. Now, that peaceful manner does involve, as you said, trapping Hulk in a bubble and throwing him into outer space. But, we as a reader are wondering, could Nebulon be right? Has he really turned over a new leaf? Does he really not want to fight the Defenders?
Well, are we really wondering?
Well, little 8-year-old Brian was wondering. 50-year-old Brian is jaded and knows all too well how this turns out.
So Hulk decides that he will bring the picture. So the little bald guy who is actually Nebulon is handing out flyers. Hulk takes one of the flyers and decides he's going to bring it back to Doctor Strange. Then we go back to this strange little uncharted island, which looks oddly like a piece of Themyscira from Wonder Woman. And basically we go back to this group, and Jack Norris in Nighthawk's body, we'll skip the whole Chandu thing in the middle, is waking up, and he's trying to figure out what this probe thing is that Nebulon was talking about.
Right. And as he does, one of the other captives, the old lady, dies, and the others all begin to feel extremely weak. And they plead to Nighthawk. They say, you're obviously a superhero. You're in a costume. Help us. And Jack is, he's in Nighthawk's costume, but he's powerless to do anything. And he wonders, where are the Defenders? Well, we find out they are at the Park Plaza Hotel attending the Celestial Mind Control presentation. And here's one of your favorite bits, Chris, a recurring bit throughout the series. Doctor Strange has once again masked their identities. He and Val are out of costume. Their costumes have been made invisible. And Hulk just looks like a really big, brooding Caucasian dude. His green skin.
Yeah, exactly. With for some reason, I also love the fact that even though Doctor Strange's spell of illusion has made the Hulk appear to be Caucasian, for some reason he's also wearing this hat with ear flaps, and I don't what are you disguising? He's giant and wearing clothes, but all you've done to disguise him is make him a white dude instead of green. I don't know, but look. Brian, I want to say to anybody who happens to be listening to this, if you think that this story is absurd up until now, boy, oh boy.
That's right. The show is about to begin. Hulk, Valkyrie, and Doctor Strange make their way up to the front row. And yeah, you're right, Chris. This is where it completely goes off the rails. They sit down. They're in the front row of this auditorium. Now, what I like here is they've taught Hulk the good manners of whispering when you're in a crowded theater. So Hulk is whispering, "Growing magician, watch, for I stole Bambi."
Yeah, in other words, I'll show you. You think I'm crazy, but he stole my goddamn deer. Listen, I want to point out one thing, which we shouldn't. This is the kind of picayune crap that. In the panel on the previous page at the end, when Doctor Strange says, essentially, "Are these seats taken?" the old woman says, "No, sir. Those 4 seats are empty. No one seems eager to sit in the front row." So those 4 seats are empty. And those 4 seats are for Doctor Strange, Valkyrie, and the Hulk.
Right.
Because Gerber acknowledges, even though in Buscema drawing the seats, it's clear that there are wooden armrests between the seats. Gerber is acknowledging that the Hulk needs 2 seats.
You know what? That completely slipped my reading.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Because he was like, I'm looking at it. I'm sure Gerber saw the art and was like, I need to point out the fact that there are 4 seats here. Anyway. So, okay, folks, look, I know Brian probably wants to spend loads of time on this, but I'm just going to explain to you in as succinct language as I can. Nebulon comes out as a little bald guy, mind controls the entire audience, has them reach under their seats like Oprah giving gifts, where they find bozo masks. And controlling them, he has them all put on their bozo masks. And then he calls one up from the audience. Well, who does he call up from the audience? One who happens to not be mind controlled at the moment, Doctor Strange.
Right. Now, again, younger listeners, they don't know who Bozo is. Imagine...
it's a clown.
Yeah, imagine the V for Vendetta masks that Anonymous and Antifa and some of our protesters wear. Imagine that as a kinder, gentler version of Pennywise the Clown.
There you go.
That's
with
what
the red clown nose and tufts of orange hair. Yeah.
And you get this bizarre panel with Hulk and Valkyrie and Doctor Strange in their civilian garb wearing these bozo masks.
I think it was convenient, by the way, that there was a Hulk-sized bozo mask under that particular pair of chairs.
And then Nebulon draws back the curtain, and all those captive, abducted humans and the baby deer are revealed on stage. They're being mind-controlled, too, and this song and dance number breaks out in the middle of a comic book.
And Nighthawk, with Jack Norris's brain or mind, holding the bowl.
Right.
He's mind-controlled, but he's still holding the bowl with Nighthawk's brain.
Right. Now, I want to pause 1 second, Chris. My partner, author Mary Sangiovanni, is sitting here in the room while you and I are recording this. Mary, what are your thoughts as you hear this unfolding?
It explains so much about you guys.
In case the audience can't hear from the microphone, she says it explains so much about you and I, Chris, that this was our formative influence.
Well, I just want to point out, Brian, that this musical number... I can't even. Yes. So there's a song and dance routine in here. Doctor Strange pulls off his bozo mask. And the little dude reveals himself to be Nebulon. And a fight ensues. Doctor Strange, the Hulk, and Valkyrie versus Nebulon. With all the mind-controlled people helping out Nebulon.
Right.
Oh, my God.
And at the end of the battle, just as Doctor Strange is about to get the best of him, he tries to use a spell to shield Jack and Kyle's brain from further abuse. But while he's doing that, Chandu latches onto Nebulon.
Chandu inside the baby deer's body.
Yes, inside the baby deer's body, latches onto Nebulon, and both the baby deer and Nebulon disappear. And Hulk has had it. Bambi is gone again?
Okay, so then somehow that is the end of that issue. And yet somehow this story continues.
It gets weirder. Gets weirder from here.
And in Defenders 35. This is interesting too, because this is a character, Brian. It does get weirder from here. But this character, Red Guardian, who's introduced for the first time in this issue, is a character I would have liked to have seen more of subsequent to her run in the Defenders.
Absolutely.
Really, I don't remember if they used her elsewhere, but they certainly didn't use her much.
They used her in Marvel Team Up.
Right.
They used her in Captain America. And that's it, unfortunately. And you're right, it's a shame because it's a fascinating character, especially from the historical perspective.
Right.
These were all written and published during the Cold War when Russia was a very different place, and American-Russian relations were very different. Actually, here in 2017, not so different after all.
Yeah, I mean, Russia is worse, and America now is sort of like Russia then.
Yeah,
Again, so okay, Defenders 35, written by Gerber, illustrated by Sal Buscema, with the notable difference of being inked by Klaus Janson in this issue, and you can see it immediately on the first page. The issue is entitled "Bring Back My Body to Me, to Me." Gerber clearly was having fun with titling this run, and we open with a woman being robbed at knife point in an alley in the USSR, which, for those of you who are too young, was what we called Russia, and in those days, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Yep.
And
it's
woman,
it's classic comic book vigilantism. We've seen this
right
in how many comics: Daredevil, Punisher, Batman, Spider-Man. Somebody's being mugged. The superhero shows up, saves the day. But in this case, it's a female superhero, and it's in Russia.
Yep. Female superhero, great costume, red and white costume. Her superhero name is the Red Guardian. Her real name is Dr. Tanya Belinsky, which we'll learn in a moment. But basically, the interesting thing here, and again, much like Spider-Man being chased by the police, she saves this woman, and then the police show up, and they're yelling, "It's she! We found her! Halt! You halt!" And basically, there are those in Russia who disapprove of the existence of the Red Guardian. These police have orders from the party council because she is not authorized. She's an enemy of the state. So in any case, she has allegiance to Mother Russia. She goes home. She goes in and the phone is ringing. And the call is, we reveal her to be Dr. Tanya Belinsky. And the call is from Dr. Stephen Strange.
That's right. And Dr. Strange explains to her and to the reader a very abbreviated version of what has happened. Basically, he needs a surgeon who can perform a human brain transplant. And Dr. Tanya Belinsky is that surgeon. So while he's explaining all this, Hulk is sitting and just stewing because sitting and waiting makes Hulk angry. Hulk wants to find Bambi.
Yeah, and again, I have to say the addition of Klaus Janson inking that panel gives us a very angry-looking Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In any case, Dr. Belinsky agrees. She's going to come, and Doctor Strange thus removes Jack Norris's consciousness from from Chandu's brain in Nighthawk's body, and returns Jack Norris's consciousness to Jack himself.
Right. So for those keeping score, Jack is now back in his own body. So
Jack is whole again.
Right. But Nighthawk's body still has
Chandu's brain. But Chandu's
consciousness is still in Bambi, and Nighthawk's brain is still in the bowl.
And Hulk wants to find Sparklehair, aka Nebulon. If Gorilla Magician won't help, Hulk will smash Sparklehair alone. Yes. So he goes out. Valkyrie decides to follow him. Jack says he might as well tag along. He's feeling in top form again. So only Doctor Strange remains behind, looking quite forlorn, holding the bowl full of Nighthawk's brain. And we cut to the Headmen.
Right. Who have been busy while all this has been taking place. They've been busy making a new body for Chandu. Now, Gorilla Man, Negan, he's convinced that Chandu is going to love this new body. Jerry is is not so convinced. He thinks that Chandu is going to be revolted. Ruby is kind of taunting them both, and as they're having this debate, zap, Nebulon and Chandu in Bambi's body show up. And the headmen are surprised, Nebulon is surprised, and then Chandu, still inside the baby deer's body, spells out, "I am Chandu," with fire on the wall.
Well, wait a second. Now let's explain that to folks. The furious looking panel. We have a panel of Nebulon yelling at the deer. Then we have the panel of the furious looking deer in close up, and then the deer fires bolts of flame from his eyes and burns the words "I am Chandu" into the wall. Folks, I am not making this up.
Nope. So,
And then, wait a second. I just have to share this piece of dialogue again. Gorilla Man grabs the deer by the throat and says, "Of all the thick-witted inept, your brain is supposed to be in Nighthawk's body. What did you do?"
Well, Chandu summons his astral form, and he explains to the headman.
Anybody who didn't read these when they were the age we were when we read them is listening to this, if they're listening to this, and thinking, these guys thought this wasn't the stupidest thing they'd ever read.
It was not. It was the greatest thing we ever read.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, basically, Ruby makes Nebulon an offer. You want to stick around and help us? And Nebulon resists her charms and says, "I do not. Mine is a mission to save mankind from itself." And he departs. And the headmen tell Chandu, "Oh, come on, let's introduce you to your new body."
Okay. Then we cut to the Red Guardian, a.k.a. Dr. Tanya Belinsky, arriving at the airport. Dr. Strange has shown up with an attorney or a guy from the State Department to help because she's escorted by her Soviet KGB handlars.
Which is what used to happen back in the day whenever
they're afraid she's going to try to defect.
Right.
Which, of course, she will. But in any case, the State Department's there. They assure the KGB guys that she's just there to do a surgery, that they need her, etc., etc. Meanwhile, they're being watched.
By a mysterious figure.
Yeah, exactly.
Who we will come back to later.
Yes, we'll leave it at that. And then, Brian, I'll let you take this because I know you want to.
Oh, yeah, I do. We get to the Central Park Zoo, and Hulk is in front of a cage going Gucci, Gucci, goo to a baby deer.
Just to be clear, he doesn't say that, but that's what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, the finger motion, the way it's drawn. He's trying to figure out if the baby deer inside the cage is Bambi or just a deer that looks like Bambi. Before he could determine that, however, the police show up, and it just so happens, fortunately, that Valkyrie and Jack are flying overhead astride Aragorn, and they land just as the cops open fire on the Hulk. Hulk is hurt by this. He thinks that Valkyrie is attacking him too, and he leaps off. He flees. Now, an interesting aside: as Gerber was writing this book monthly, he was also writing Howard the Duck, Marvel 2-in-1, and another title called Omega the Unknown. And when Hulk leaps off here in this panel, it immediately is picked up in issue 2 of Omega the Unknown.
Right.
The storyline is continued from there. So, we've talked about the tight continuity back then. If you were a kid reading Omega, the Hulk's first page in Omega the Unknown is referring to this Defender storyline. He's talking about, Bambi at the zoo and Sword Girl attacking him. And you're like, the hell's he talking about? And there'd be a little caption at the bottom that would say that's taking place in Defenders issue 35. True right. Believer. That's how they sold comics. So yeah, Hulk's gone for the rest of this issue.
Hulk's gone. We come back to the Headmen. They have transferred Chandu's consciousness back into the new version of Chandu's body because the Headmen have performed an incredible surgery on the remains of Chandu.
Right.
And Chandu has allowed his consciousness to be transferred back into his original body, which has now been transformed. Now, you might think this is impossible, folks, but when you flip the page, you're about to see the stupidest thing that has been in the pages of the Defenders thus far.
Before we flip that page, though, I want to point something out to you.
Go ahead.
Obviously, you and I as adults, we know what Bambi's fate was here.
Right.
Right? I mean, this is the end of Bambi. We don't see Bambi again in the comic. Basically, the Headmen killed Hulk's pet deer.
See,
but
Brian,
Gerber doesn't address
that.
You
need to go and pitch Marvel a follow-up to this where the Hulk is hunting down and killing the Headmen or the Maestro from the future as he knows he's dying and the last thing he wants to do is hunt down and murder the Headmen for the death of Bambi.
Well, yeah, you said it. You turned the page and here are the improvements.
This is
and I'm just going to
let me just say this. No matter how many times I say this is absurd and it's stupid or whatever, everything else in this whole run, despite its absurdity, I love it all anyway. But this is really stupid.
All right. I'm going to read the caption.
All right, go ahead.
Crimson bat wings spread from his back. A hideous, twisted horn protrudes from his forehead. His teeth have become fangs, his tongue that of a serpent. Clusters of lampreys have replaced his arms.
And that's not a metaphor.
No.
FYI, folks.
Yeah, there's 5 lampreys for each arm. So he's got 10 lampreys instead of arms. His legs end in feathers and knife-sharp talons.
So he's got basically the leg from the knee down, or just above the knee down, he's got the legs of a giant hawk, like a human-sized hawk.
Right. He's got
a normal
body.
Human torso and upper thighs. He's got bat wings, a twisted unicorn horn, a long serpent's tongue, fangs, and these giant lampreys that are each... Now, he's no arms. They've been replaced by these things. All right.
And
so needless to say, he's a little pissed.
And a fight breaks out between the Headmen, Chandu versus the other Headmen.
Which Ruby makes short work of him, shooting out tentacles from her weird computer-generated head and wrapping him up. And she says she's telling him he's an idiot because they've made him immortal by taking his brain patterns from the deer and inscribing them upon an artificial brain crafted from the same material as her head. Because remember, his brain is currently in Nighthawk's body. So they've given him an artificial brain. She says, if you find this body distasteful, simply employ its power to steal yourself another. Your new brain can be implanted anywhere.
Right. We get a real quick aside with Red Guardian and Doctor Strange getting ready to perform brain surgery on Kyle. But yeah, then we go to a construction site where Chandu does just that. He finds a big old blue collar construction worker.
The new Chandu, yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna steal him for his new body.
Yeah, and while he's doing that, Jack Norris and Valkyrie are having a heart-to-heart, sitting on the edge of a building. Aragorn is on the building behind, on the roof behind them. And they're talking about, where the Hulk could have gone, and he puts his arm around her, and Valkyrie says, "Why are you interposing your arm between my back and the chimney?" And he says, "If you'd rather I didn't." And she says, "No, you do make a better pillow than the cold brick." And she leans into him, and that's the first time we see some sense of intimacy between the woman he still thinks of as his wife and Valkyrie, and Jack Norris, I should say.
Right.
And then...
I was going to say, and then Chandu just happens to fly by them with this screaming construction worker clutched in his hawk talons. And they give pursuit on Aragorn. And This scene bothered me as a kid. Chandu attacks Aragorn and wounds the horse.
Yeah.
Wounds him quite badly.
Yep. And Valkyrie repays him by slashing one of his wings off. They fall from the sky and crash through the roof of a fancy restaurant. She's trashing the place in the middle of this fight. He tells her she needs a bath.
Yeah, real misogynistic here. He says, "Look at you, bleeding, soiled, unkempt. You really should bathe, my dear."
She doesn't take kindly to that. He tries to impale her with his unicorn horn. She grabs him by the horn, lifts his head up, and knees him in the face. It's a great sequence. I love that bit. And then
she's about to kill him. She's about to break his neck, but the cops intervene.
Right. They intervene, and she thinks that they're going to arrest him, and she's going to take her sword and go. But in fact, they also arrest her, which leads into Defenders 36. Same team: Gerber, Buscema, Jansen.
Right. We open with a multi-page recap of basically the last 15 issues of the Defenders.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything from Gerber's run. The Squadron Sinister, the Sons of the Serpent, the Guardians of the Galaxy. If you listen to the show, you're familiar with that. So we're gonna cut right to the chase.
Right.
The brain transplant was successful. Finally, Kyle Richmond's brain is back in his own body. And
then he wakes up, and Dr. Belinsky is there, Red Guardian in her civilian clothes, saying, that he's going to be okay. She's going to tell him the story. And then these three guys show up with guns. And Brian, I couldn't help but look at this panel several times because basically these criminals, for those of you who aren't reading along with us, they're wearing what we call domino masks, which are those little masks that cover just their eyes, like Bucky wore in World War II and bandits wore in old Donald Duck cartoons. And that's what it made me think of, actually. The three crooks in Disney, old Disney comics.
Yes, very much so.
What were they?
The Boys.
The Beagle Boys. Thank you. The Beagle Boys. And so these three guys come in, and they're basically the Beagle Boys in human form. Red Guardian beats the shit out of them. While out in the hallway, Doctor Strange is essentially hypnotizing / mind controlling the KGB and Soviet military people to allow Dr. Belinsky to stay in the United States for an extended period of time.
Right. And we then transition to, Doctor Strange learns that, the Red Guardian has beat up these three guys. There's no explanation of who these three guys were or what they wanted other than they wanted to take Red Guardian with them.
Right.
And to the best of my knowledge, it never gets explained later in the series.
Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe we've forgotten, but we'll find out. But let's assume there's no explanation unless we come upon one.
Shades of Elf with a gun.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe that was intended to come up, in some future appearance of Red Guardian, and because she was abandoned later, it didn't.
Maybe.
No.
Meanwhile, Valkyrie is in fact under arrest. She's down at Central Booking, being booked into jail. And if you're wondering what happened to Jack and Aragorn, well, Jack is still on a rooftop
with the wounded Aragorn.
Yeah, and Aragorn is really hurt, and Jack is facing down the landlord of the building, who has a shotgun, and we learn that Aragorn's weight is causing the roof of the building to collapse. So the landlord's solution is to just shoot the horse,
which is not a solution, but okay.
Yeah, and Jack is he's trying to keep that from happening when all of a sudden, bam, Hulk lands on the roof. And there's a great panel, a great sequence here, drawn by Sal Buscema, inked by Klaus Janson. And Janson really makes the Hulk look menacing here. Hulk says to the landlord, "Horse is Hulk's friend. If man wants to hurt horse, man is Hulk's enemy. Hulk will smash." And he lifts the landlord over the roof to drop him. And Jack says, Hulk, no. And Hulk says, yes. and drops the guy.
Drops the guy over the edge of the roof, presumably to his death, until we flip the page and we see that he's fallen onto like a lower part of maybe the next roof or an extension of the building. But it seems pretty clear that, at least as far as Jack Norris is concerned, Hulk didn't know that was there.
Right.
Hulk intended to drop this guy to his death.
Right. This is a very, very angry Hulk. His pet deer is still missing. Now Sword Girl's flying horse is hurt. This is a Hulk who has fucking had it with the nonsense.
Oh my God.
And he picks up Aragorn in one arm and grabs Jack with his other arm and bounds into the sky.
Exactly. So, we go to Doctor Strange and Red Guardian in their civilian guises in a cafe or coffee shop of some kind. She doesn't understand why these KGB guys let her stay, but she's happy. She doesn't know he's Doctor Strange. He doesn't know she's Red Guardian at this point. So he's trying to explain to her the whole thing about mind control and all this other stuff that's going on, and he's thinking about Nebulon, and with that segue, we cut away to the CMC Center, the Celestial Mind Control Center, where 3 guys recently released from prison are arriving to check it out. I'm just going to say, Brian, with that, so we don't waste time with it. They're in their civilian guises. But
yes, their civilian names are Alex Gentry, Sam Smithers, and Leopold Strike, but any true Marvel fan knows them as who, Chris?
Oh, any true Marvel fan knows them as a trio of villains only slightly less lame than the Headmen. The Porcupine, the Eel, and Plant Man.
That's right. And this is not their first Marvel appearance. They've shown up in Daredevil and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, but now they are perhaps fittingly added to the rogues gallery of the Defenders.
They ring the bell, the door opens, the little bald man who is actually Nebulon answers, says he's been expecting them. In the background are the chorus of cheerleaders in bozo masks that do yet another cheer. I just can't. I can't with this, Brian.
And Plant Man, perhaps echoing Chris's thoughts, says, "I just can't even. I don't know what this is," and he leaves. These 3 supervillains are there to learn about celestial mind control and perhaps become better supervillains.
Right.
Plant Man says, "This is ridiculous." There's a chorus line with clown masks on. He leaves. He strikes out on his own. He leaves Porcupine and Eel there with Nebulon, and decides that he'll become a solo supervillain.
Then we have the beginning of a story, or the continuation of the story of Valkyrie being arrested, but the beginning of a story that goes on for a little bit that I think Netflix should really pick up on. Because Orange is the New Black is a huge success, and The Defenders is a huge success. This is Valkyrie in a women's prison.
Yeah.
With the inability to harm another woman without harming herself. So you have the whole dynamic of Valkyrie in prison being bullied by this big sort of angry woman and befriended by this mousy young girl and threatened by the what do they call the women, the guards. These days, of course, they have
EOs.
What's that?
Correctional officers.
Yeah. So they bullied by them. So it gets it. I don't want to spend too much time on it, although it makes for interesting reading, just because the idea of saying, hey, how do we make Valkyrie unable to be powerful? Put her in a position where everyone around her is female and she can't actually fight any of them, fight any of them. She does threaten this large woman for a moment, but then it makes her ill. So yeah, it's an interesting story, but it doesn't really have a lot to spend time on.
No. We then go back to Greenwich Village. Wong greets Doctor Strange and Red Guardian at the door. And before they can visit too much, Doctor Strange gets a a mysterious phone call. Someone, we don't know who, has vanished. And, Doctor Strange tells Red Guardian complications have arisen at the hospital. So we can assume it must be Kyle who has vanished.
Yep.
And he reverts back to Doctor Strange as a dick and leaves Red Guardian there with Wong and flies off.
Yeah, so he flies off, and she witnesses this, and so she obviously knows at that point that he's Doctor Strange, or she doesn't know. She knows that he's not an ordinary person.
Right.
And he tries to use his magic to summon the Defenders as he has in the past. Valkyrie is so tired, so exhausted that she's unconscious in the prison. Hulk is like, fuck off. He says, get out. He doesn't want to deal with it right now. So it's Doctor Strange alone going to the hospital, where he is attacked immediately by...
Wait. Before you do that...
Sorry. Okay.
I want to point out that panel. The reason Hulk is being belligerent and tells him to get out is because Hulk and Jack are at the local ASPCA with a veterinarian who's working on Aragorn. And just the bizarreness of that, the ASPCA.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is bizarre, and yet at the bottom of the same page, Doctor Strange is attacked by Plant Man. Let me say that again for those of you who aren't hearing me. Plant Man, a superhero in a green costume, a really weird looking green costume, who can control plants. And I don't mean the imaginative way that Poison Ivy does in the DC universe. I mean that he grows giant plants like something out of Little Shop of Horrors and attacks people with them.
That's right.
He also has some kind of device that shoots what he calls thorns. I'm not sure if they're actual thorns or if it's some kind of gizmo. But as he first attacks Doctor Strange, he's about to kill him. Red Guardian shows up to save him. Plant Man says, he sprays her with thorns and says, then again, I've always got my fists, and I'm not above using them on a woman, not if she figures she's tough enough to tackle the Plant Man.
Right. And what happens, long story short, Plant Man, this third-rate supervillain, who's not even using celestial mind control, has successfully captured Doctor Strange, Red Guardian, and Nighthawk, and the real Nighthawk, back in his own body. And he's got them in this giant seed pod attached to this giant beanstalk, growing up out of the middle of the city. And what's his plan? He wants $50 million from Richmond Enterprises, or Kyle Richmond and the other two hostages die.
There you go. And then I think we'll probably end up doing 37 and finishing up with 37 this week.
Yeah, I think that's a wise move.
Defenders 37, same team again, picks up right where we left off. They've got Aragorn on a blanket, trying to bring the horse through the doorway
of the
ASPCA. So but Hulk thinks they mean Aragorn harm, and Jack Norris is trying to convince him, no, they have to take Aragorn indoors. They need the sterile. And Hulk says, no, men try to fool Hulk, but Hulk is too smart. This is like Donald Trump talking about how smart he is. But Hulk is too smart. Horse is dying. Hulk knows. When men always lie to Hulk while they hound Hulk and kill Hulk's friends. And then what happens immediately?
The men prove him right. The cops pull their guns and start shooting at the Hulk.
Yeah, exactly.
He decimates the cops, leaps into the air, attacks a police helicopter, smashes it out of the sky. He is on a rampage. He leaves Jack there with the cops and, just takes off. And while Jack is there with the cops, they get a call on their police radio. Jack can't understand everything, but he understands the word Richmond Enterprises, and he decides to head over to the hospital, find Doc Strange, see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I would also point out for those of you at home keeping track of Hulk's nicknames, the police are Blue Hats.
Yes.
Blue Hats, FYI.
It's not a bad nickname, actually.
I think we should keep that.
So we cut back to the hospital. Outside, Doctor Strange, Red Guardian, and Nighthawk are still trapped inside the pod. For some reason, none of Doctor Strange's magic works on the pod. This is a guy who can cross dimensions, who's faced down the devil himself, and yet his mystical arts are useless.
Yeah, they're somehow not strong enough to escape. And again, let's remind folks, there's nothing mystical about Plant Man. And yet, the strange plant configuration he has created is defying Doctor Strange's attempts to blast a hole through it or transport them somehow out of it.
Right.
Which I just, again, there's a similar plot convenience in the next issue, but we'll get to that next week.
So basically, I mean, at this point, with Valkyrie in jail, the Hulk pissed at everyone, and the rest of the Defenders being held captive, it's Jack Norris on his own again, just like it was during the Guardians of the Galaxy saga.
Right.
And, Jack says...
Jack Norris to the rescue.
Yeah, what other Defenders are left? Well, oddly enough, we then seg to 42nd Street, where Luke Cage, Power Man, a Defender who everybody who listening should be familiar with by this point, is beating up some guys who had a little protection racket going on. We don't need to give a blow-by-blow of that. Basically, the phone rings, and it's Jack Norris saying, hey, the Defenders need you.
Yes, exactly. Well, the phone, what I like about this scene is the phone is ringing while Cage is beating the crap out of these guys.
Right.
Which is a great scene. And then Cage answers, remember, at this point, Luke Cage is a hero for hire. He doesn't have the millions of Kyle Richmond. He can't afford to go gallivanting around. He needs to get paid for his work. And then he's frustrated and annoyed because he's got to go do some pro bono work to help the Defenders again. He keeps needing to bail them out of their difficulties.
Right. Listeners will remember that this is not the first time. Several times now in the series, Doctor Strange has called upon either the Son of Satan or Luke Cage or both of them to pull their asses out of the fire. And here we are again.
Right. So I want to sum up the next 2 pages, Brian, with this. Doctor Strange finally is able to blow a giant hole in the wall of this seed pod that above the streets of Manhattan. And he and Red Guardian escape. They end up, I think they leave. Oh no, he transports Kyle Richmond back to the hospital, and he and Red Guardian escape to attack Plant Man. Plant Man, and this, of all of the craziness here, this is my favorite bit. So Plant Man fires some kind of weapon. He calls his Chloro Blaster. And it causes instant mutations. So from the ground, these things that look like they're something out of a cross between Sesame Street and a Studio Ghibli film.
It's like a Sesame Street version of Stephen King's The Tommyknockers.
Yes, thank you. They're giant purple balls of fluff with eyes and fangs. And they surround Doctor Strange and Red Guardian, press against them, and they begin to lift them up into the upper atmosphere, or he says, into the ionosphere, Plant Man intends. He's pretty smart for a guy who's a plant. And then, of course, Cage arrives to save the day. Plant Man gets racist.
You're right. I'd forgotten about that. You got Luke Cage and Jack Norris standing over Plant Man. And Plant Man said, I'd forgotten about that little racist bit in there.
Black man, I don't know what you're yapping about. Plant Man, there you go.
You wouldn't see that in a comic these days, would you?
No, well, it depends who the villain is, actually, I suppose. But yeah, I was like, I read that, I was like, just Jesus, okay. So he's unimpressed with Cage, at least for the moment, but Cage, of course, escapes. Doctor Strange manages to get his hands free so that he can use a spell to transport himself and Red Guardian away from these things. Now, Brian, I also have to say, I find these things, these giant mutant spores, they remind me of these little things from Spirited Away. But in any case, there's still a cluster of them flying up into the atmosphere. And again,
I think
when you
should
do your
pitch.
Maestro versus the Headmen comic, I'd like to see that cluster return to Earth.
No, I think you should pitch that. C.B. Cebulski is the new editor at Marvel, and I think you have a good relationship with him.
I've never met or spoken to him.
Well, okay. Your relationship with him is still better than mine. So,
Well, in any case, Doctor Strange and Red Guardian appear on the street with Luke Cage and Jack Norris. And Jack Norris just wants to know where Valkyrie is, and this is the first time Doctor Strange realizes that Valkyrie has disappeared. Jack explains that the Hulk had carried, the Hulk had carried himself and the wounded Aragorn off. Hulk ran off, and nobody has seen her. And where is she, Brian?
well,
Where
she's
is
still in
Valkyrie?
prison. She's still in prison, and she's still being bullied by this much bigger woman.
Who says, "Come on, sweet cheeks, rise and shine, it's chow time," which is 1970s women in prison dialogue if I've ever heard it.
It is. And, Valkyrie is, she's still at a disadvantage here. She can't do anything against this bully because she's forbidden to attack females. It causes her physical and emotional duress if she does. So meanwhile, Plant Man, after getting his ass handed to him by Luke Cage and Jack Norris, he decides, I was wrong to try to go solo. I need to get back with Porcupine and Eel. So he returns to Nebulon's Celestial Mind Control Center, where we see Porcupine and Eel finishing up their Celestial Mind Control training. Plant Man decides that, this is not for him. This is still crazy. He tries to leave again. Nebulon blasts him into unconsciousness.
There you go. We go back to the hospital where Kyle is recovering. This is now Jack and Dr. Belinsky and Dr. Strange and Luke Cage. Go back to the hospital. I noticed that Dr. Strange in at least one of these panels doesn't seem to have a mustache anymore, but we'll forgive that.
Basically, they're all talking about, well, we're glad that's over with. And Luke Cage brings up, hey, I don't mind helping you guys out every now and then, but, I can't afford to keep doing this. Red Guardian, of course, being from socialist communist Russia, is shocked that Luke Cage expects remuneration for aiding his fellow man. Luke Cage is about to set her straight when Nighthawk reminds everybody, hey, I'm Kyle Richmond. I'm a millionaire. Luke, how about we set you up on a retainer so you can help the Defenders whenever we need it?
There you go. So anytime they need Cage, he'll be there, and Kyle Richmond will pay the bill.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
So then there's an interesting little philosophical moment between Doctor Strange and Kyle Richmond. Kyle's freaking out because while his brain was out of his body, he had an out-of-body experience where he's thinking about he couldn't see or hear or feel, but he thought he could, but none of it was real. And so now he's trying to figure out if what he's in now is reality. So Doctor Strange sort of comforts him in a way, but also kind of leaves him hanging. He says, so our abrasive young tycoon has uncovered his long-buried spiritual side. It should be most interesting to see which new paths this shall lead him down.
That's
and
right.
then, Brian?
Well, Doctor Strange, so consumed in his own thoughts, so wrapped up in his head, rounds the corner and gets hit with some kind of weird gas that knocks him unconscious. And we find out that, excuse me, we find out that, I guess that was the effects of the gas too. We find out that Porcupine and Eel have already rendered unconscious Red Guardian, Jack Norris, and Luke Cage. Now they've done the same to Doctor Strange. We end this week's episode on another cliffhanger as the Headmen Nebulon saga continues.
I was going to say the Headmen, Nebulon, Bozo, Porcupine, Plant Man, Eel saga.
Elf with a gun.
Elf with a gun, who hasn't appeared in these last couple of issues, but Steve Gerber will fix that in the next issue.
Yep, he's back next week. And we will be too. And in the meantime, if you just can't wait a week to hear the dulcet tones of Chris and myself, I want to remind you folks, Chris co-hosts along with Jim Moore and Jonathan Mayberry a show called Three Guys with Beards. I co-host a show called The Horror Show with Brian Keene. Both of those podcasts are available here as well on the Project Entertainment Network. They're available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and all other platforms. I also want to give a shout out to our engineer, Tommy Clark. He has a podcast as well. It's called the Necrocasticon. We encourage you to check that out. And until next week, Chris, what is it you always say around this time?
I say, Excelsior True Believers, Brian. That's what I say.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week.
Three Guys with Beards. The Project Entertainment Network store, featuring t-shirts, mugs, stickers, hoodies and more from your favorite Project Entertainment Network podcasts.
Ink Stain Scribbler's Rest.
The Horror Show with Brian Keene.
Why not show your loyalty by wearing a cool product from the podcast group and show off to your friends?
It cooks.
Armcast.
The Mondo Method.
Monster Attack.
Necrocasticon.
Go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com and click on the store tab for more details.
The Liars Club podcast.
Bizarre.
The Lunch Ladies Book Club.
Matters of Faith.
The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with stuff from the best podcasts on the internet.
The Curtain Jerkers.
Buttercup of Doom.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
Hey, this is Jamie Engel of Origins, a bi-weekly podcast that shares the story behind legends and lore, where myth and science meet. If you like stories with a supernatural slant, get your bi-weekly fix every Monday at 4, when I share the origins of things that go bump in the night, urban legends, classic monsters, and current sightings of those creatures who normally hide in the shadows. Plus, each chapter features a short story related to the bi-weekly topic. So go ahead and subscribe, binge, and grab some amazing swag through Project Entertainment Network on Patreon. And if you want to nerd out on transcripts and book links, head over to podcastorigins.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.